rebuilding. A catastrophic failure, a new start. Physically, mentally, our careers, our businesses. Step back, first step, next step. The driver in me just wants to get it done tomorrow. We'll do this, do that, let's move this, where are we at with this? You build some confidence, build some self-esteem, start to feel better about yourself. The Silverback Blueprint Podcast, a show for men over 40 who focus on getting stronger, staying motivated, building discipline, creating a community, and becoming truly happy. Hey guys, Kurt Haas here from the Silverback Blueprint Podcast, getting ready to do episode 44, but before we have to have a word from our lone sponsor, which I happen to own the company, which is pretty cool, right? That's the budget we have right now. Of course, obviously, it's brought to you by Hostile Gear, clothing, accessories for powerlifting, awesomeness and stuff. And the message I have today about Hostile Gear is stop buying our t-shirts. I'm just tired of printing them, but honestly, start buying our hoodies. It was almost 5 degrees at one point this weekend. So someone actually said at my house, "Hey, I need a fucking hoodie," and I'm like, "Hey, I got a hoodie for you. Just give me $50." So it worked out pretty good. I didn't get paid any money. My wife got mad at me. But head on over to Hostile Gear and use the promo code Silverback and get 20% off. Look awesome, and you know what? People stop picking on you, so it's fantastic. Today's episode, guys, we have a really cool treat for you. We're going to hit an interview today with Mark Hatfield. What's cool about Mark, local guy, so local for us, we're, if you're listening to me in Russia, we're in Ottawa, just outside of Ottawa, the East End. If you're from Toronto, you don't care. I just got turned on to him by Luke, was telling me, he'd be really good as a guest, so I listened to a podcast he did with Jody Middick, and great story. And this guy's got a great, interesting background, a lot of cool stuff. And again, we're going to get into some of the stuff he's done, what he's been through, but also about, our message about what happens now, what happens in our 40s and as we approach our 50s and beyond, stuff like that. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Mark Hatfield.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me. I do think I'm in the field for a hoodie, though, although I bought a new winter coat this weekend in Vancouver. And I thought it was the greatest purchase ever. I'd be able to come home and wear it, and I'm sweating like crazy today. It's too hot here.
It's 20 degrees. We were just talking about that on the drive-in, and it's October 10th, which is ridiculous. So finally, global warming is kicked in.
But it is a nice coat. It's right there.
It is.
It fits me perfect. It's not all I got long monkey arms, and it's not often I find a coat that fits me, especially when they label as extra large. So I was very excited about that.
It's like an ego stroke and stuff like that,
Yeah.
And this is the great weather for jackets, because what I like about it is you leave the house with a jacket and you get home at night realizing you took your jacket off somewhere and you fucking lost it, right?
Dude, seriously, I left on the airport. I got a call. I was sitting there. I checked through security. I get a call. Mark Hatfield, please report to the front door. I had to go back through security. I left my coat at my dad's apartment.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. You put a coat on. I was like, I'll never leave this coat anywhere. I was in love with it, and forgot it. First place I was.
And you know what I love about that story? I guarantee you he wasn't thinking about his jacket when security called him out.
I was like, I thought, well, damn, what did I leave in the pocket of my coat? Thought I emptied that pocket.
That's crazy. My favorite question, have you ever left your luggage unattended and stuff like that? I mean, what are you going to say? What do you do if you did leave it for a minute? What do you say? Like, do you admit it and then suffer the wrath, or just let's see where this goes?
I had a bag with me too that my dad packed. Like, he's getting up there in age, 80, whatever, in his 80s, and so he's doing like the reverse. When your wife's pregnant, she starts nesting and she starts like gathering things around here. My dad's the opposite. He's like throwing shit out, but he doesn't want it to go in the dumpster because he wants to know in his head that it's in a safe place. So he packed a whole bag for me, full of pictures and like stuff I'd never seen. Yeah. Stuff that meant shit to him. You know what I mean? I'm looking going, I have no idea where this came from. It's a whole bag. So they're like, "Did you pack this?" I'm like, yes, of course I packed it. What's in it? No idea.
They're watching through the X-ray booth, seeing what's going on, stuff like that. That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. Well, listen, I appreciate you come in, and literally, I guess you just really flown in yesterday from Vancouver, which is the other end of the country. Again, if you're listening to us from Poland. So yeah, a little bit about yourself. Like I said, I listened to that podcast, and you've done a lot of cool stuff. And the one thing that for me that came through, and definitely it'll come through to our listeners once you start telling it, is you don't fucking quit.
Well, I think that's the secret to anything, right? Like, you don't have to be good at anything as long as if you're passionate about it, if there's something you want to overcome or achieve, is that you just never stop trying and you learn from your mistakes and you ask people who have been there, done that, and you just keep heading in that direction every single day. And eventually you'll find yourself there, right? Like, I mean, you look at anybody who's had success in anything, and they've usually had the hardest road, the most obstacles to overcome. We all look at someone and go, wow, he's gifted. He's, you know, he's meant for that. And sure, there might be some of those people, but I think if you find those people and you ask them, they've overcome a lot too. Right? I mean, the NHL, you look at, there's like one Sidney Crosby who's sort of been pushed along the whole way, but you ask, you know, that whatever it is, there are 500 other guys, and they've faced everything that you could imagine, right? They've been cut, they've been injured, they've had the whole bit, and they've just stood up on top of those, you know, roadblocks and made them their stepping stones, and they've achieved, and that's true for me for sure. When I was young, obviously 15 years old, my brother and I, this is my story, is we were watching the Super Bowl together in 1985, January 22nd, Dan Marino, the Miami Dolphins, the whole bit. And we were in Blackburn Hamlet. Yeah, sitting on the mom's green couch and my, you know, the little tiny TV, and Dan Marino was having a great game. And my brother that year for Christmas had bought me a Dan Marino jersey, right? So there's extra significance to it. And he was like, you know what, Dan Marino's only in his second season. Man, you know, Mark, someday you could play in the NFL. And it was a crazy thought, right? I'd only just started playing football that year and the whole bit. And you know, my brother and I, we'd go out to the local sports field on South Park in Blackburn Hamlet, and we'd play catch, and we did that. We just really had a passion for it. We liked hanging out, that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, 9 months later, my brother passed away on October 30th, 1985. And I know you talk a lot about struggles and the way to handle adversity. And I mean, I only realized this looking back, which is true for most of things in life, as you look back and you realize what those negative things did to propel us forward, right? And as a child, I mean, I could have easily just quit and given up on everything, but I had this feeling that I didn't want to let my brother down, that, you know, and I'm not a religious person or anything along that line, but I did feel that there is more to life than just, you know, brick and mortar, and that if I made this promise to my brother that I would never stop trying to make it to the NFL, if I never stopped, you know, just giving it everything I had until there was nowhere left to keep trying, or until I did it, then that would be a great legacy for his life. And that's what I did. I mean, I went to Gloucester High School, and I was never great. And I was never an all-star. I had to go back an extra, like, 2 years of high school. I did 2 half days at the end, like grade 14, grade 15, you know. And then after that, I finally got one university interested in me, the smallest football playing school in Canada, Bishop's University, great school. But nobody from there had ever gone on to play in the NFL. But it was all I had, and I went there, and then same thing. I mean, I had some success off the start, but my first year there, I never even played a game. I showed up with a broken ankle and a big, you know, tip of my finger cut off, and I just kept trying. They moved me positions, and it was the same thing there. I went an extra year, but I just never gave up. And then finally, in my last year, I started, you know, focusing my goals. I started writing them down, which was a huge part of my life. You know, you can want something so bad, you can have the passion and the desire to achieve it, but until you write it down and you actually tell people, okay? I was also keeping it sort of a little bit of a secret because I was embarrassed of failure. And then I just started telling everybody. I said, I'm going to play for the New York Giants. And most people obviously laughed, but some people didn't. Some people, you know, the people that matter, the people that are there to actually help you, they started listening. And in the back of their mind, the gear started working. And they started helping me out and pointing me in that direction. And that year, I became an all-star. Not like an all-Canadian or anything. So just a little taste of success, right? Like they called it a conference all-star.
But at that point, that was the best you'd ever done. That was like the highlight of your struggle, right?
Finally, that feeling like maybe it is kind of working. Maybe it is kind of going in that direction. And then we sent out my videotapes to NFL teams and to agents, and I got invited to the NFL Combine that year. The draft came, so that was really exciting. And I got a phone call in the 4th round from the Houston Oilers saying, "Hey, we're going to draft you." So I'm standing by the phone and watching the TV, and then the 4th round comes, and the 4th round goes, and then the next 3 rounds come and go, and the draft is over, not drafted. And then the phone rings, and it's the Detroit Lions. They invite me to training camp. So super exciting. You know, And I was so prepared for that. You know, I mean, I'm sure you see people who work hard every single day at your gym, right? And it was like that. And it was from morning to night. And everything was focused on that one goal, mental, physical, you know, diet, everything. Yeah. And I was ready to go. I was super, super in shape. And I got there, and I did really well. But there was no place for me. They brought me in to hold bags. And they actually brought me in to hold a spot for a guy, what's his name? Lomas Brown, a perennial all-star left tackle who wasn't going to show up for camp. He was a contract year, so he was holding out. So they brought in this Canadian, and I was just basically taking his spot till the training camp was over. And I didn't know that, but it didn't matter. I went out there and I gave it everything I had. And just the fact that I went out there and did really well in their training camp sort of, you know, opened the eyes to other teams. So, you know, often when we head into a situation and it's something we want, like I wanted to make that Detroit Lion team, so I gave it everything I had, but there was no opportunity there for me, right?
But you could see.
So I could see I could hang with these guys, and so could other people. So the opportunities opened up elsewhere, which I didn't realize at the time because they don't have they're not going around telling everybody these things. So I come back here to Blackburn Hamlet, you know, sitting on the green couch and trying to figure out what to do. And at this point, CFL teams wanted me to come and play there, and I still wanted to play in the CFL, but I was so close at this point to the NFL that I didn't go. And a couple of weeks later, you know, I kept working out and kept giving it all I had. I was going to let that season go and just to see if there's any more attention. And I got a phone call, and it was from the Miami Dolphins. I get on an airplane, I fly down there, and it was October 30th, 1995. It was 10 years to the day that my big brother had died. It was 10 years to the day that I'd made that promise that I signed a contract with the Miami Dolphins. And the guy who actually welcomed me to the team was Dan Marino, walked in the room. And,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so there's a lot to learn from that message. There's a lot like never give up.
Right.
And things take a long time. Like that was 10 years of people, first of all, telling me I couldn't do it, of me telling myself I couldn't do it, and then having to stop that mental, you know, that dialogue, that's going on, that you can't be done, it's never been happened. Stop it. You've made this promise. Keep going forward. What do you have to do today in this moment to take yourself towards that direction? And that was a struggle, and that's what I did. And that's how I think that after football I learned to sort of do what I want, be successful at the things that I wanted, is because as a young age, from 15 to 25, that's all I did every single day, whether or not I knew I was doing it, right? I just figured that's the way the human brain works, and that's what happened. And after football, I mean, I had to retire from football because of injuries. And I wanted to do other things. I wanted to get into TV, and I mean, within a year, I was on a TV show on Comedy Network called Game Face, where I was doing sports-related comedy. And then I wanted to be a firefighter. And it's all the same things, right? You find out the little steps that it takes. If you don't know, you ask somebody who does, and then you head in that direction. And you just, you know, everyone makes mistakes. That's part of being a human being, right? So you make those mistakes, figure out what went wrong. And I know a lot of times people are like, oh, how do I figure out what went wrong? The main thing is just to keep going, right? Like, you know,
well, you have to actually go through what's wrong to know what's wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of things that we talk about in a lot of our podcast episodes, obviously you've already touched on organically because you're doing it or did it or continue to do it, I'm sure, to this day. We become better because of our struggles. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? And I think if we try to shirk, you know, things happen to us, so we can rise up or we can shrink, right? And at the end of the day, I'm not saying you don't, you know, reel from a huge, you know, loss like that, but the same token, you turn it around and you use it as fuel, right? That kind of thing. But I think we almost have to embrace the struggle, because the sooner we learn to embrace struggle, the more we get tested, the better we become, the tougher we become, and it's what shapes us today, right? Without that, you know, and I think that's something that we're losing a lot when I look at some of the younger people around us. The struggle is in there. You know, I don't think everyone has to eat shit all the time, but, you know, getting a taste of it once in a while is good. You know, I think every guy's got knocked on his ass at least once, hopefully, because if they haven't, they're that cocky ass in the bar in their 40s that hasn't got punched once, right?
That's right.
It's going to fucking hurt a lot more when you're, you know, 50 and some 20-year-old puts you on your ass. The other thing that I really liked that you talked about, and something that we think is super important, is the power of journaling, the power of writing it down, committing to yourself, right? There's, you know, you hear the quick comments, you know, through the lips, through the fingertips, and it's all through. They're showing there's science behind it, chemical releases in the brain, but you made it real. You took it and manifested it, you know, into something physical, something real overall. And I think that's a huge thing that once you acquire that skill, you never lose it. In fact, you get fucking better at it and stuff like that.
It's funny you should say that, because one of the key moments for me was when I was in university, my final couple of years of university, and I was wondering, is this like, have I been wasting my time, and how is this even going to happen? And what I had, and this happened in a matter of like a few minutes. I was looking at a picture of myself playing football that year that this guy had taken, and this is the 90s when there isn't pictures everywhere.
Yeah, there's no internet.
Right? So this guy actually had just taken like 2 pictures of me and 2 pictures of my roommate, and he'd like given them to us. And that picture changed everything. I looked at this picture. It was a great picture. And, I'm sitting there and I'm staring at it. And I'm like, why isn't anyone giving me any attention? I look good in that picture. Everything looks great. There's fans and there's a player and the whole bit. And then in the late 90s, the Sports Illustrated put out an issue about left tackles.
Which was your position?
Which was my position.
Okay.
So like a position that doesn't often get any attention, any media attention, definitely not on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Here it was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and inside they had like the top 6 NFL left tackles, and there's great pictures. And I cut them all out, and I glued them on a piece of Bristol board that I'd been using for a project in school on the other side, and then I put them all around. And this really happened. It's like a dream board, like an Oprah Winfrey dream board.
Yeah.
And I put them all around, and I stuck it beside my bed, and I went, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
There's no reason why that these guys who are kind of looking like me can do it and I can't.
Yep.
Okay. And then that's when I started writing this all down. I mentioned before that I started like writing the goals down and asking people, and I would, back then you had to telephone people. You had to telephone them, and you had to catch them so they would pick up the phone and then talk to you, right? And so that's what I did. I would just sit there and I would call people who had done that. Through a coach that I had that knew people who had played pro football. I called them and I said, listen, what do I have to do? Mm-hmm. What are the steps I got to do? And then they would send me on, down different alleys, and I would just follow them. And that's when I started writing the stuff down, and I wrote down the goal about playing in the NFL, and then I would write down what I was doing every week to week, and then every single day. And I had this 3-level thing that I had no idea how to organize myself,
right.
But in my brain, that's how it all made sense. And that's the way it worked. And once I started doing that, things accelerated like crazy. And I also mentioned telling people in those last couple of years. As soon as I started telling people, it became a reality, and everything sort of started moving in that direction. And it was like blowing my mind, because people who sort of that I looked up to in the football world were then talking that way also.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was just at my dad's house in Penticton, and this is an example. And he wants visitors. 81 years old. He can't travel anymore. He's there because of the climate.
Right.
And so I was there, and it'd been in like 16 months since I'd seen him. And the last time we were there, they were kind of speaking in a vernacular like, oh, I hope you guys come back. And then this time they were speaking like, so next time you guys come.
Cool.
And my wife was like, they're speaking. And I go, that's because they speak like that. We're going to be back in like 8 months. You know what I mean? I guarantee you it's the way you talk, right?
Yep.
If you talk and it's going to happen in the near future, then it just does,
Absolutely.
right? Like that, your brain is now conditioned to think, okay, we got to get back there soon. So, I mean, there's definitely something in the way you talk and in the way you write things down. And I think if you don't write things down, the chances of things happening are very slim, very low. They happen by chance after that.
Well, I think, we hear that, you get lucky, you leave things by chance. And something else you touched upon is, you were at that point where you were fit, you were ready. And I think the key word there is you were ready, right? Opportunities manifest themselves when you're ready for them. Because they're happening anyway. You're just not present. You're not putting yourself in that position. Obviously, you're very coachable. And I think that's the biggest thing that we try to get people to understand. Whether I'm helping them in the gym or they're listening to this podcast, whatever, is there's a point where you have to if you want something, you have to have that realization, then I have to open myself up and I have to become coachable. Because what I've been doing up to now has gotten me this far, good or bad. And if it's good and you want to go further, you still have to make changes, right? If it's bad, then you got to make some real fucking changes to make some differences and stuff. The other thing I like that you talked about is when you start telling people, we call that a social contract, right? And once you start telling everyone, ideally, you don't want to be the fucking douchebag that, like, hey, how'd that go? Because, at the end of the day, self-respect wise, we don't want to sit there and have to go, oh, well, that kind of thing. But there's some motherfuckers out there that want you to fail and can't wait to bring it up and say, oh, how'd that work out, Mark? And then you're like, oh, really good. I just had this tryout. And they're like, oh, fuck. Do you know what I mean? So there's a bit of that. There's a lot of people out there that want you to fail. And I think that I use that a lot when I try to bolster myself, and I'm like, well, I'm going to show these motherfuckers. But deep down, I'm showing myself. That kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I try to, you face those, especially nowadays with social media, when you see all that out there. I mean, back in the 90s or whenever, when I was going through this, I'm sure people are saying that. I had no idea, right? But you just have to forget about them, leave them alone, because that's nowadays, and I think that's a struggle that, like you said, 20-year-old people have, is that they spend a lot of time looking at Facebook, or maybe whatever kind of social media they're on.
Yeah.
And
porn.
They're porn, and they're looking at everyone's highlight reel, right? And you're like,
right.
this guy's got this and that. Like, turn that off, right? It's great for us to post these things, to make it out there to people who are addicted to that.
Yeah, for sure.
But like once you start like believing that's the way the world is, you're in trouble.
I think what you got to do is who you're following matters, and you want to follow guys and girls, obviously, not in a creepy way, but guys that are, because we're talking about guys that are being honest and showing you the shit at the same time.
Yep.
To me, that's, I call it truth, right?
Yep.
So when I'm having a shitty day or a rough week, I'll post about it as well, too, because it fucking happens.
Yep.
I love what you said about the highlight reel and stuff. First off, they only want to show the best, right? I just did this, I just did that, right? And I'm a firm believer that 70% of it's bullshit to begin with, right? That kind of thing. So there's that. But at the same token, you see these wonderful fronts. And then when you get to know something or you get close to it, you're like, holy fuck, it's rotten inside, right? And I think that's what a lot of people want to do. And the internet and social media, I found, has made it easy. So, the last few podcasts, I shit on the memes, rise and grind and do this and stuff. The problem I have with that is that's the extent of people's rise and grind, is posting about it.
That's right.
I'm like, it's got to go so much further than that, right? But we fall in love with that. And there's that little endorphin release and that brain activity that we are doing something, right? But then we come in and want to do it again because we get caught up in that rather than the sweat equity and stuff.
That's right.
So you rock that. You made it to the NFL. You went to the CFL after that, right?
Yeah.
What was that like? And I don't know a lot about football, right? I understand more of it now. I married a woman who's more about sports than I've ever been.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. She could talk stories about. She's from Toronto, but I love her anyway.
Yeah.
So we're Leaf fans and we're Jays fans and stuff. But she grew up in four sisters, and her parents came from Pakistan. And when they landed, they became Canadian. And let's go the Maple Leafs, and that kind of stuff. That's how they got into it. So I'm the big burly guy, right? Everyone thinks I played football. I played all these sports. So we go out somewhere to a bar or whatever, and the guys were just talking to me about sports, right? And at first, I didn't fight. I was that girlfriend that was excited if I remembered the name of the player. So, and to this day, she hates it, right? Guys will start talking to me sports, and I know more about sports now, but it'd be early on. And the guy would go to the bathroom. I'm like, quick, give me something. So she said, well, talk to him about that. So the guy would come back and be, well, if they worked on the defensive play, but when the guy's like, yeah, right. And she'd be sitting there going, fucking asshole. Because I knew nothing about it and stuff like that, right? So the NFL, the CFL, I know a little bit. I saw my first CFL game in the longest time. 2 weeks ago, we saw the Renegades.
Yep.
There we go. Awesome.
Renegades? No, Red Blacks.
Red Blacks.
Yeah,
that was
Renegades is their last.
That was great. That was the last incarnation.
Yeah.
And it was great, but it was fun. We went out as a family and stuff, but I just don't know enough about it. But I know there is a difference in NFL to CFL. The field's different. The rules are different. But what was that like environment-wise? What was that like for you? You went to the epitome, the NFL, the big show. Yeah. What was it like transitioning to the CFL?
It's great.
Don't shit on the CFL if that's what it's going to be.
No,
but,
it's definitely not.
Yeah,
it's a great
thing.
question. I don't get asked that very often, but I do have a lot of thoughts about that because I've done both, and I did them both sort of at the prime of my life where I could judge the two. The NFL, you get there, and first of all, like your mind is just spinning. You're like, really? Am I here? And you're with these guys who have been put on a pedestal my whole life, like Barry Sanders and just guys that you've been looking up to for years, and you're in a huddle with them all of a sudden. So your head, because the way the NFL markets its players is it makes you think they're superhuman beings, right? So you get there and all of a sudden you're in a change room with this guy and you're in, you're standing beside him for stretches and this whole bit. And so it kind of blows your mind. I can remember my very first, the NFL was the first time I played American rules football. So it's important to realize they are different games and the different body types that you play against. Okay. People are always like, oh, it must have been easier when you go to the CFL. Definitely not. These are all high-end, competitive, the best athletes on the planet for sure, right? Some of them are different body types because the game is different. The CFL is more of a passing game. So the guys I'm playing against are more of a pass rusher type body. They're a little bit smaller, whereas the NFL is more of a running game. So they're bigger guys. Right. Okay. They're a little less mobile, and a little stronger, but different. Okay. Not better or worse, but different. So and the one big difference is here I go. We're doing a 1-on-1, so offensive lineman against a defensive lineman. It's my turn in line. And I'm going up against their first round pick, guy named Luther Ellis. And we line up, snap the ball. Oh my, what? like there's zero, like in the CFL, you have a yard off the ball.
Right.
So you have it's a different timing, right? There's a split second of, okay, react. And then here, the guy's standing basically beside you and you got to like get in front of him before he moves. So I grabbed his jersey, ripped it off his back, and just to make the play, not happen. And then we started again. But there's a lot of little things like that. Off the field, the NFL charters its planes and you fly to a game, play the game, turn around, come back. So there isn't a lot of bonding time. I mean, there's time in the change room during the day. There's time on the plane afterwards. But in the CFL, one of the key differences is you ride commercial. You fly commercial. So you go down there on whatever Air Canada's schedule is, and then you play your game. And then if they don't have another flight till like noon the next day, You're hanging out. You're going out to have a few beers. You're partying all night.
Going to the museums and the art galleries.
You're doing cultural things. And then so that right away makes you more of a team, makes you bond more, makes these people your brothers, right? So that's another thing is in the NFL, because they pay you so much, they think you have to be there all day long. So you show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and you watch a game film of the team you're about to play. You go out, you practice, you work out, you watch that game film again, you take a break, you watch that game film again. Like they just do redundant things all day long.
Just fill your day.
It's too much, just so they can say, well, you're earning your $2 million this week. We had you 8 to 5.
Okay.
Whereas the CFL, bang, it's all business. You show up, you watch the film you need to watch, you work out, you practice, you go home. So a little more efficient with time. And it depends on what city you're in. And if you're in a city that just loves football, then the fans are all going to be there, right? Like I went from Miami where people love the team, and I went and actually got put on the active roster for the Houston Oilers.
Okay.
Where Bud Adams, the owner, was trying to move the team, and nobody cared about the team. People literally said, "Oh, you play for the Oilers? Pff, whatever," and they would walk away. They didn't care.
Wow.
Right.
Cool.
No matter who you are, And then
Yeah.
and then you go to a team like Saskatchewan Roughriders, and you're once again put up on a pedestal, and
Saskatchewan
everyone
takes their
loves
shit
you.
serious. I mean, even
Very
I know
serious.
that. Like that's a fucking serious football town.
Yeah, it's serious for sure. And there's others like it too, right? Like Edmonton's like that, Calgary's like that. When I went to Vancouver, not so much, but people appreciated what we did and respected that we were professional athletes.
Vancouver's a pretty funny because I traveled a bit and usually I try to go down to an NHL game or see different sports. And Vancouver, I don't know what year you were there, but they have this whole area where like the football stadiums, the hockey stadium, like it's really centralized.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's because that's just what they love to do or they just kind of want to move it out of the way and have it centralized, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas going to Calgary with a Saddle Dome and stuff, it's just everything's built around it and it's a whole environment and stuff. So it's very interesting to see even different hockey stadiums that I've been to. Like, I go see the Ottawa Sounders, when they play the Leafs. Everyone gives me a hard time. Well, you should be a Sens fan. I go, I'm going to the game. I used to drink your beer. Now I just drink your pop, but I'm spending money there and stuff. Yep. But when I go to like the ACC, there's just certain stadiums and certain just have different vibes, We were looking at the hockey game the other night, and they showed Ottawa, and the seats aren't quite full, and then they showed the Toronto game, and the stadium's packed or the arena's packed, but now they have this big courtyard outside. Yeah. It's like fucking wall to wall people, right? Yeah. So I can just imagine the vibe would be very different when you have that happening and you don't.
Yeah, I think that's the way things are going too, is to have a social aspect of it. Yeah. You look at the Red Blacks' new facility is they have whatever it is, 25,000 seats, but then they also have areas where you can go and hang out, be social, talk to your buddy. Oh, something big happened. You look at the field and there it's going on. There's a big screen. Yeah. And I know the Sens have changed that. They've taken out some of the seats and they're going more with a social kind of thing. And it's really worked out well. And I've seen it firsthand. The Houston Dome, the Astrodome in Houston, indoor stadium. Okay, it gets humid in there like you wouldn't believe, and people stop going.
They want to get the fuck out.
Everybody just wants to get out. Same in Vancouver when they had BC Place. I don't know if it's an open air stadium now, but to me, football needs to be open air in the elements, because once it's like an indoor, you're in a living room. Like in Vancouver, when we played, some days it was like a living room in there, and it could it would be cold outside or rainy outside, whatever, and you look up and people are like they're acting
t-shirts and shorts.
Yeah, they're acting like they're just chilling instead of being part of it. Part of the elements.
That experience, the retail experience, the sport experience is taken different. Yeah. So you got would you say you got as much out of the CFL experience as you did the NFL? Just it was different.
I would say there's things to be gained from both of them for sure. As far as making having relationships and friends, they were both very similar. You're in the trenches all day long with somebody and they become your friend, right? Especially if you have common interests and so I've made friends in both of them, and but yeah, very different, but very similar at the same time. You know, I think it's hard to pin anything that would be different in them actually, because you know, the experience was surreal the whole time. Like, you know, when you achieve something you've been dreaming of and trying to do so bad, and then it finally happens, it feels very fleeting. It feels like it just went by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you try to appreciate it, you try to enjoy it, and you know, it's a kind of life when you wake up early, you can't wait to get there, and you get there and there's nobody else there yet. You know what I mean?
But
like,
you don't give a shit. You're just excited to be there, right?
Yeah, I can remember in Miami, that was the whole deal. As I got there, I remember I've signed a contract. I'm on the Dolphins. Now what do I do? And I remember calling home to my dad, and I'm like, how do I even fit in here? You know, I'm on a team full of first round picks. I think there's like 25 first round picks in the NFL. And then there was me, this kid from Ottawa, and I'm like, I figured out pretty quick why I was there, right? They had no money left, but you got to get in where you fit in, right?
For
like,
sure.
yeah, that's my opportunity. And I remember my dad saying, just do what got you there.
Yeah.
Be the hardest worker on the team.
Yeah.
And so I made sure I was the first guy there working out every day. You know, I wasn't working out hard, but I would jog around the field.
But the formula worked, obviously,
Yeah,
right? So
it.
why would you screw with it?
That's it.
And I guess you can see too where, and this is interesting. This is where we're going to start, I think, talking a bit more now. As you're into your 40s and you've had that as a past, a phenomenal past, right? And achieved big things. What do you do now to stay fired up? And I know you're into a couple other things. We'll talk about that. Yeah. But you're just talking. I like that how you talk about the fleetiness and you're the pinnacle on the top, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to let that go. And so, in fact, some people get caught in that, right?
Yeah.
And they try to hang on too long, or they can't let go of those. They try to live those glory days in that vein too long. You know, how did you deal with that? How did you go from you know, all that to now you're 40 something, you got a family, you're doing some other stuff. What's that been like?
Yeah, I'll answer. There's a question in the middle there first, and then I'll get to that because there's one point I want to mention. And yeah, I was working super hard. I did everything I could. My goal for that 10-year period was to make it to the NFL. And then I made it. And then I sort of, I kept working at that level. And instead of resetting my goals to something else once I got there, I continued on with my goal to make it there. You see what I mean? Like I continued to do the same things, which were work super hard, which you would think would be enough to take me to another level. But in the past sort of 20 years since it's happened, and this actually came from a high school kid. I'd done a speech. I'd presented my speech to them, and his hand went up, and I'd probably done 300 speeches to that point. Nobody had asked this question. And then the kid says to me, he goes, why didn't you, what would have happened if you had set your goal to become a Hall of Famer? Did you feel it?
Yeah.
Like I stopped, and my back, I get the goosebumps. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if I had got there, I'd achieved that dream. The day Dan Marino shook my hand and said, welcome to the Miami Dolphins. If I had gone home and go, I want to be like Dan Marino. I want to be a Hall of Famer. I want to win a Super Bowl.
You want to be the guy welcoming the new player down the line.
Exactly. And that never happened because I just didn't think of it. Basically, I just didn't think of it. I was like, I achieved this. I felt fantastic. I was riding that wave.
Yeah.
I continued to work hard how it got me there, but maybe there could have been a little tweaks, a few adjustments here and there, ask a few other people different questions, shown a bit of different interest. And sure, I was putting the work in, but we mentioned it earlier. What if I'd start telling people that? What if I had written it down? I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. And I had to go, Dan Marino, how did you get to be at this level? And Don Shula, one of the greatest leaders of all time. How do I do it? And just started putting that in their heads and pointing me in that direction. And obviously, I'm not in the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame, but I have achieved some things. And then so later on in life, after having lived that, there are other things I want to do. And what I do is I point myself in directions that make me the happiest. And I always wanted to be a comedian, and so I've started doing that every Friday night at Yuck Yucks. It's Mark Hatfield's Friday night, so that's a certain level of success. There are things I want to go from that. And when your kids are young. So my kids are young, 16, 10, and 13. And a lot of it has to be focused around them and driving them. And then that's also something that you should be proud of. And you look around, there are people who want to have healthy families. And so every day I'm appreciative of this wonderful healthy family that I have, and this beautiful, caring wife that lets me do all these crazy things that I want to do. And so there's definitely some extreme happiness that comes from that. Absolutely. Right? You have to realize what you got in life, right? Like, especially relative to other things. A couple of years ago, I used every penny I made in that year to go to Honduras to build some houses for people. And it just happened to be around Christmas time. And I went there, and I could see little children, one pair of shorts, one ripped up T-shirt, no shoes, standing in a puddle and laughing.
Yeah, happy as shit.
Happy as shit. Yeah. And not once during that 2 weeks I was there did I hear anybody yell. Did I hear anybody complain about everything? Yeah. And then I come home back to North America, and it's like, late November. It's Christmas time, and you see people in stores having tantrums.
Fucking lunatics. First world idiots.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So you really have to appreciate what you got. And that's sort of, I know when you turn 40, and it's funny because the first 20 years of your life seem to go so slow. And then the next 20, like, where did the time go? Like, it's just an unbelievable feeling. But I think it's also important to take the time for yourself every single day and have goals. I think you still have to have goals in your 40s. And I was just visiting my 81-year-old dad, and his goal now, he has goals. He wants to finish his book in a year. He's writing a book about the history of his life. So, awesome. And that's probably what keeps him going.
So do you think you got a lot of, those characteristics from your dad? Is it your environment that brought that out and stuff? Like, now you've talked about your brother and stuff. But, we learn from either watching or being just as part of the environment, or we learn from having to go out and figure it out for ourselves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that, at 81, he's got goals and he's going after shit and stuff like that. So definitely some parallels.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad lived a very interesting life. And actually, I have a podcast, and my thoughts going, and this is an important thing, because going there, I thought, what am I going to do with my 81-year-old father? I'm there for like 6 days to visit him. How is this even going to work? And my wife says, bring your podcasting equipment, get him to tell a story. Awesome. So in my head, he's going to talk for 45 minutes, fall asleep, whatever, every day. We have over 6 hours of his stories.
That's awesome.
He loved it. And I've never known so much about my dad. There were times when we laughed like crazy, times when we cried. Yeah. Information that he'd given me, I had no clue about his life. Yeah. So, I can only encourage people, and that's going to be my message when I post this podcast, is that, if you have a parent or whatever, sit them down, record it, and on anything, on your iPhone, anything. And I guarantee you, they'll become passionate about it. People want to tell their story. People want to be remembered. They want to have a legacy, right?
And we have something to say, right? We really do, I think. And I think what's really interesting too is that I think more and more, as we become more cocooned in our devices and in our worlds and stuff, in our small worlds, I think we're also yearning to have that connection and those conversations. And I think that's one of the reasons why podcasting is just has taken off, has for some time, but I think will continue because people want to hear stories. They want to have, we used to thousands of years sit around a campfire, that kind of stuff after the day was done and stuff. And we, took down the food and, that's what we did. We told stories and that's how history, and that's how we passed it all down, that kind of thing. So I think that's innate in us as well. And you know what, we learn from listening, and we learn from doing. And if we find people that we resonate with, well, we're going to listen more. So I think it's really important. So what's a day like now for Mark Hatfield? Like, just what's a standard day? How do you stay, get your shit done? Do you have a formula? There's a certain way you do things? You told me the story just before we started about how you like to do off-roading with your bike. Mark came here all beat up, and I'm just meeting Mark for the first time, and I don't know if he had a big workout or he's hungover and stuff. And then finally I asked him, I'm like, what the fuck happened? So he's going to tell this story now. He has to tell it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we were on it's called the Kettle Valley Railway. It's one of these engineering crazy feats that happened in the early 1900s. A guy built a railway through sort of the Rocky Mountains in Vancouver, whatever those mountains are, to get
the other side.
Yeah, to get to the other side.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it took 60 years. It took longer to build than it was actually in use. And it's blasted through rock, and the cliffs are crazy.
Yeah,
you're driving
crazy
along.
Shit there for sure.
They say, respect the edge, because if you peek over the edge, it's a 200-foot drop at the shortest. And so here we are. It's me, and it was me, my wife, the guide, who was kind of a farther ahead of us the whole time. And then there's this like 72-year-old man who I remember looking at when we were like checking out the bikes. I'm like, I'm gonna have to give that guy CPR.
He's gonna have to ride back on my bike on my back.
I'm gonna be saving a life today for sure. And so we're driving along about 45 minutes into it, and there's this beautiful vista. My wife's like, take my picture. So I reach into my coat and I pull out my phone, and with one hand I snap her picture, and it was a terrible shot. So I could see her stopping. So my only hand on the bike is still on my left hand. And this bike had great brakes, right? So I hit the brakes, and it was the front brake, and I just started slow motion flying over top. My handlebars slam into my thigh, and then I'm like, ah! And my hand kind of with the phone scoops underneath to protect the phone. Like I cared more about my phone than my femur. And then I'm worried about the coat I had just bought, instead of my clavicle and my spine snapping.
Because those grow back.
Yeah, because those, I have OHIP, right? Like
That's
that'll
right.
be fixed. And then the bike comes down on top of me, and I'm like weeping. And then next thing I know is the 72-year-old man is just pulling the bike off of me. And I'm like, thank you, sir. It was terrible. My hand is all, well, it was all cut up and swollen and bleeding. And I'm just like lying there going, the view from here is remarkable, Gertrude. And it was a humbling experience. And then, so you limp around for a few days is what I've been experiencing. But I just got out of bed because I'm on Vancouver time and lazy. And, so I haven't had a chance to warm it up, and we're in a third floor place here, right? So I'm limping up the stairs.
It's like the horror movie. The fucking stairs just keep coming.
Yeah, they get narrower and narrower.
Exactly. Like anytime we fall, I think as adults, the worst part about falling is all we can think about is who's seeing this, who saw this. It's all about the embarrassment. I'm like, I'll pop that bone back in myself. I really hope no one saw it though, right? Because then I can tell the story about there was bears and orphans and stuff like that.
That's right. Exactly what happened. I was worried about how I'm going to explain this story, and the bike is yet to hit me in the head. Like, so far so good.
That's awesome.
How's the back of my coat? Was the first thing I said. I looked at the screen, of course, the screen on my phone. We're good, no crack. How's the back of my coat?
As you get up on your feet, you go into the classic, what you want to do in one of these situations. That's awesome.
I'm glad I've shown you all that we can experience a fall and move on.
So going back, so a day in the life, what's the tip? So you're currently a fireman.
Yeah.
All right. So that's keeps you fairly busy sometimes.
Yep.
What house are you at? Can you say? Are you allowed to?
Conroy Road,
Right.
Station 31. No, I love that. That's a definite.
It's all fucking barn fires out there and shit like that.
Well, it's sort of between there. It's an urban area to the north, and then to the south it is a lot more sort of big long laneways and barns. We don't go to many barn fires. If we do, we're sort of not the first few vehicles there, so we don't actually go in to put them out. But it's a busy station, and there's a lot going on there for sure. I mean, people don't realize, but there's fires almost every day in this city.
It's a big city.
Like, it's people are like, well, what do the firemen do? But man, we get a fire almost every day. We have a life-changing experience every single day.
Amazing.
It is an amazing occupation. It's one of the things I'm most proud of for sure is to be able to have that and sort of give back. And it's just very similar to football in that you have to work as a team. You cannot get by going to a call. There's so much going on that everyone needs to know their part and do their part. Reactive, it can't be
automatic.
Time to think. It has to be automatic.
Yeah.
And you get there, and it's an occupation that makes a difference in the lives of people for sure. And people in Ottawa should be very proud of the emergency services we have here.
They're good people.
Yeah, you make one phone call and you get a fire truck, an ambulance, and a police car all within 10 minutes at your house, and they're all trained and ready to go and have the necessary equipment. It's an impressive thing.
It is. We are quite lucky to have that. So when you're not being a fireman, this comedian thing now, right? This is a gig. Like you said, you're hosting on Friday nights.
Yeah.
So is that your new journey? Is that where your passion is? Is that, you know what I mean?
It is for sure. I'm very passionate about that. I've started podcasting this summer, and I'm very passionate about that too. The podcast and the comedy, and I'm sure, as you know, when you start podcasting, these things start to go together, right?
Yes.
People will hear the podcast and then go to my show and go to my show.
It's a beautiful platform.
It is.
To
It's
express
amazing.
Yourself, I think, right?
Yeah. And it is, and it's I'm at the point now. I've been in comedy for 2 years, and so my first goal was to make people laugh. So I got up on stage that first time and made people laugh, and that felt good. And then I worked on that, and now through podcasting, having amazing guests like Mike McDonald on the show, and people who have been doing it for 20, 25 years, and they start to whittle away at sort of what you're doing and make it a little more complex than making people laugh. And for me now, and what I'm sort of entering into, and it's sort of along the lines of how I started public speaking, was to make a difference, was to take mine and my brother's story and to make a difference, because that's what fuels you. You know, when you got to drive 3 hours to do a speech and get paid, not get paid, whatever, you want to at least be making a difference in the life of people, because when you're gone, like the money or whatever doesn't mean a thing. It's whether or not you've been able to inspire and to change a life, right? So that's sort of where I want my comedy to head now. And it's not easy. It's not easy to.
It's a craft.
It is. It's a craft. And you look at someone like Richard Pryor, who could go up there and tell a life-changing story and make people laugh, right? Like that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to entertain, but to also inspire.
Yep.
You know, I think when we look for heroes in this world, it really comes down to who's changed my life, who's taken my journey and bumped it in a better direction. And that's kind of what I want to do. That's not kind of what I want to do. That's exactly what I want to do. And I want to start experimenting with more sort of storytelling as opposed to set up punchline, just make people laugh and then, haha, that was fun. I want them to laugh, but I also want them to think and to sort of change their, the way they are doing things.
Well, it seems like it's also your style as a storytelling and the stuff and self-deprecating is always cool and stuff, but it's just, I think we get our own style, and I think it's important to be true to that. I'm a big guy, and I learned to make people laugh early on because I knew I was intimidating, right? And I don't want to intimidate people.
That's right.
Right? That's not how I want people to know who I am and stuff like that. So, I'll make a joke, I'll make them laugh, right? But at the same time, get the point across, get the message across. And at the same time, too, I think life's pretty tough, so we got to be able to laugh. And if we can't laugh at ourselves a little bit, then we're taking our shit way too serious.
That's right.
And it's going to hold us in. It's going to pigeonhole us and stuff like that. So on the field for the NFL, first time. CFL, first time. On stage, the first time. Similar, different?
Great question. Pro football, there's so much going on. It's a real circus out there, and you're not really concerned ever about the people watching. You're more concerned about the camera that's pointed on you than you are. But even then, you're not thinking about that. There's just so much life and death going on between you and that person across the line. Then that's where your thoughts are. And I don't think that's even a healthy thought. I think what you should be doing is think about what you have to do, exactly where to put your feet,
your job.
Exactly, where to put your hands. All that is what you should have done so many times beforehand that like I said, it's reactive. Not you're not thinking about it. You're just doing it, right? And stepping on stage, that's when it becomes I hope these people love me. You know what I mean? And you got to look them in the eye. You got to look everybody in the eye, make them feel part of it. But what I do, and it's one of the things that I teach kids, is about positive self-talk and how you tell yourself that you have something to tell these people and they're going to love you. They may not, right? They might just stand there blankly and starely. But if you have that going through your head, then that's going to give you your best opportunity, right? Every time before I get up on stage, and this is Andrew Dice Clay. Remember Andrew Dice Clay thing?
Absolutely.
And I heard him say this one time. He said, I'm the greatest comedian that's ever lived. And that's what he would tell himself every time he stood on stage. And who has more confidence on stage than Andrew Dice Clay, right? Nobody. So that's the same thing I tell myself every time I go on stage.
And still a little nervous? Excited? Excited. That's important, I think.
Excited is the word. Excited is the word. That's
butterflies a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what I've been told, excitement and nervousness are the same things that happen in the body, right? The only difference is the words we tell ourselves. Right. So if you're nervous to do something, it's because you're telling yourself you might fail. If you're telling yourself you're the greatest, and I mean, behind this has to be preparation, like we mentioned before. You have to prepare
tip
for this.
Tip of the iceberg,
Get
right?
ready. Yeah, tip of the iceberg. So you tell yourself, you feel it. It's normal. You want to feel those kind of butterfly.
That's the moment that's gone, you're done.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It's the adrenaline. It's why you do it, right? Yeah. And then so you're feeling this, and you're feeding yourself positive things, and it's not easy at first, right? You have to fight that demon in there going, you suck, you're gonna, and you have to punch that demon.
Shut
in
up,
the
Mom,
face.
I'm fucking working here.
Exactly. And then you get up there, and once you get up there and the light's on, and that all goes away, and you just have a good time.
And that's where preparation obviously makes a big difference. But I think that's where passion trumps the nerves, right? Because you really want to do it, and you're going to do it and stuff. Yeah. So in closing, I mean, we could go on for a ton more stuff. You've got a lot more stuff we could talk about, and I'd love to have you back again. Maybe off air, you'll tell me to go fucking take a shit. But either way, what's the best way for us to get a hold of you, see what you're up to? Tell us what it is. Luke will put some notes in the podcast for sure. But if people want to know more about Mark, I mean, I know I want to come down and heckle you now because I know you.
Yeah, for sure.
How do we go about doing that?
It's funny that I've had people tell tell me they're coming to heckle me, and the shrinking daisy in the
You're like,
crowd.
as long as you buy your fucking ticket.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot harder to be a heckler than it is to be on stage, because I don't get them very often, if ever.
Yeah.
And when you see them, like, shut up, and they're done. You know what I mean? But the podcast is hatfieldtrip.com on iTunes. You can go to my website, markhatfield.ca, for my speaking stuff, or come to Yuck Yucks on Friday nights at 7. Go to Yuck Yucks website, buy a ticket. It's called Mark Hatfield's Friday Night. It actually starts October 20th. And it's a great concept. It's different than all other shows in town here. It's the UK version. And what it is instead of having a feature, like a 45-minute guy at the end, we have everybody do about 10 to 12 people. So we'll have the touring comedians do 10 to 12. There's usually 2 or 3 of them in town. I'll be the host. And we'll get the best local comics also to do 10 to 12, and which their material is bang on for 10 to 12, right? Because they've been practicing this stuff for 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So it's a great show. Sometimes we'll have a musical guest, and it's from 7 to 8:30 every Friday night, and people have really enjoyed it. We did it last year. We're starting it up again this year.
So October 20th starting. How long is that going to run for?
It goes to March.
Okay.
Almost every Friday night.
And this is your second year doing it?
Second year, yeah.
So it's got to be pretty good if
it
you
is
take
good.
it back.
It is, right? Yeah, it's great. It's a great opportunity to see headliners.
Yeah.
And, often, to go and watch one guy, put all your eggs in one basket to watch a 45-minute person, if it's not
funny,
someone that's
not your cup of tea,
that's
right?
not tickling you, then. But for us, it's a new comic every 12 minutes or so.
I like that idea, especially my wife and I are very different, male female, but obviously I'm a huge guy. She's 5 feet tall. She's this little thing. I curse because I like the feel of cursing.
Yeah.
She can't stand cursing.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when we go to these things, I'm always worried. Like, I hope there's some comedians that isn't their every second word and stuff like that, because I want her to enjoy it as well. So I like that idea that there's some different styles and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Because this way you get exposed to some different things. And there's a lot of funny people out there.
There is.
It's a good laugh. It's a good thing and stuff overall.
Yeah.
It's healthy for us, obviously, and stuff.
Yeah.
So guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Mark, it was a pleasure having you. Like I said, I'd love to have you back again. I know you have more things just different areas. I enjoy talking to you. And I think our listeners are really going to be appreciative of what you had to share. We're going to check out your stuff, and I'll come down and listen to you and make me laugh and stuff like that. You're a funny guy. I like it. What I like is that you're a funny guy, but you've got something to you. There's just something about you I like, and I think that's super important. And I think it's going to come through to our listeners on this. There's something special about you. So
thank you.
And I don't just say that. Well, I do say that a lot, but this time I really fucking mean it. I really do. It doesn't feel dirty. I don't need a shower this time. Thank you very much, Mark. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Awesome, brother. Thanks, man.
That's great.
Cool. Guys, head on over to iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Reach out if you have any questions, comments, or ideas at kurthaas@gmail.com. And I'll talk to you guys later.